All right, everyone. All right, settle down. It's time for another episode of Mr. McLaughlin's Distance Learning. So last time we talked about Martin Luther and how he wanted to spread his ideas and used the printing press in order to spread those ideas, mostly about social changes and religious changes. Well, those religious changes are going to start spreading throughout Europe. And we're going to talk mainly about three people today. We're going to talk about John Calvin, Henry VIII, and Elizabeth I. So first let's talk about John Calvin. Now, John Calvin was born in France, and in 1536 he set up a set of schools called the Institutes of the Catholic Religion. And in these schools, he was teaching people about the proper way to worship. He believed in one major idea, something called predestination. Now, predestination basically means that God has already chosen if you are going to gain salvation or not, which means before you're even born, God has determined if you're going to be able to go to heaven or not. Now, this seems like a weird concept, but Calvin taught it as, listen, you still don't know if you're going to go to heaven or not, so you should do the best things you can do on earth. That's the whole point of religions, is to teach people how to be good citizens and how to be good human beings. So he decided to set up a theocracy in a place called Geneva. Now, a theocracy is a government run by a religious figurehead. So if the Pope was in control of an entire country, that would be a theocracy. If a rabbi was in charge of an entire city or community, that would be a theocracy. So Calvin decided he wanted to create a theocracy. And this theocracy in Geneva, Calvin's Geneva, had very strict rules. And it just so happens that the people he was teaching to loved strict rules. It's kind of like what we're in today, right? We have very, very strict rules, and a lot of people are complaining about it, but it's meant to keep people safe, right? John Calvin did the same thing because he wanted people to be the best people they could be in the eyes of God. So he set up this theocracy, and this idea spread. Calvinism spread throughout all parts of Europe. Spain, France, England, Scotland. People loved it. But Calvin hated Lutherans. They hated the ideas that Luther preached, and they decided to go in their own way. Another person who decided to go his own way was Henry VIII. You've probably heard of Henry VIII about how he had so many wives because he couldn't have a son. Well, that's true, and that actually leads us into why he wanted to have a religious change in England. So he's married to this woman named Catherine of Aragon. And it's great, they're young, they're loving it, except Henry wants one thing, one major thing, and that's a son. Why a son? So he could play catch? No, he wasn't really the catch type. He wanted a son so that his name, his legacy could go on living. If he had a son, his son would take over the throne when he died, thus allowing Henry's bloodline to continue. But Catherine didn't give him a son. So he was frustrated and he said, how do I get out of this? How do I get a woman that will give me a son? I know. I'll ask the Pope for an annulment. Perfect. So he calls up the Pope. He doesn't really call him. Phones don't exist. But we're going to pretend. He calls up the Pope. He's like, yo, Pope. Popey. My main man, Popes. I don't want to be married anymore. Can you fix that? The Pope picks up and is like, nah, brah. Can't do it. Not going to happen. Bada bing, bada boom. Pope's from Jersey, I guess. So the Pope won't do it. Henry's pissed. So he says, you know what? If he's not going to change it, I'm going to change it. And he decides to create his own church in England called the Anglican Catholic Church. And in this church, it says that you don't listen to the Pope, you listen to the King. The King is the sole person in charge in England. The Pope's furious, but everyone's breaking away from the Catholic Church at this point, doesn't know how to fix it. So Henry VIII appoints the Archbishop of Canterbury to annul his marriage, and he gets remarried. So there's a fun little way to remember all of Henry VIII's wives. It goes something like this. Divorced, beheaded, died. Divorced, beheaded, survived. That last wife finally got him a son. And that son grew up to be the ripe old age of 13 before his dad died, leading him to be the king. Except 13-year-olds can barely tell you what they want for dinner, let alone tell you how a country is run. So they had to have someone step in and help out. And that leads us to our third person, Elizabeth I. Now, before we get to Elizabeth, we have to talk about one woman before her. Her name? Mary Tudor. That's right. She hates Protestants, and she wants Catholicism to come back to England. So what does she do? The only sensible thing, at least I can think of, she starts burning Protestants. She rounds up a bunch of Protestants, lights them on fire. They're gone. No harm, no foul. No one remembers, right? Well, people do remember because in 1558, she dies and Elizabeth I comes into power. And she's like, whoa, 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 whoa. This whole religion thing, it's throwing England into chaos. We need to control everything now. So what do you do in order to make everyone happy? I know, let's compromise. We'll bring in some of the Catholic ideas along with this Protestant idea, and we'll combine them. So she takes all the rituals and traditions of the Catholic Church, including keeping the clergy involved, the bishops and the cardinals and things like that, but she takes the idea from Henry VIII in that the monarch, or the leader of England, would still be in charge. And she called this the Church of England. And it worked. People loved it. We're like, yeah, we're happy on both sides. Except for, of course, the extremists who are far-leaning Catholic or far-leaning Protestant. They didn't like it that much. But, you know, for the most part, Elizabeth kept everyone happy. Okay, so now we're starting to see some sort of change happen within Europe. People are leaving the Catholic Church, and that's going to lead them to have to make changes. But for now, it's time for Mr. McLaughlin's Fun Fact of the Day! Today's fun fact comes from the 1600s. Now, I don't know about you. I have a favorite fruit. That's right. I have a favorite fruit. It might not look like I eat a lot of fruit, but I got a favorite. And it's the pineapple. It's versatile. It's gorgeous. It tastes like heaven. You could put it on everything. And I mean everything. If you don't like pineapple on pizza, get out. Unsubscribe from this video. Don't like it. Dislike. No, wait, no. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I love you. You're allowed to have your own opinion. You're wrong, but you're allowed to have it. So anyway, in the 1600s, pineapples are first introduced into Europe from South America, somewhere around southern Brazil. And people go nuts for pineapples. They start buying them up. They're super expensive, and they don't always just eat them. Sometimes they show them to their dinner guests, like, oh, look what we have, a wonderful pineapple. Wouldn't you like to eat this pineapple? Oh, I named him Charlie. Oh, prickly. People showed off their fruit because they were proud of it. Let's go back to a time when we could show off our fruit. That sounded wrong. Anyway, this has been Mr. McLaughlin from Mr. McLaughlin's Distance Learning. And always remember, stay safe, stay healthy, and social distance. Divorce, beheaded, survived. Divorce, beheaded, survived. No. Divorced, beheaded, survived. No. Divorce, beheaded, died. Divorced, beheaded, survived. I think.